A couple years back, I made a top 10 quarterbacks of all time video, and you won't believe this, it caused a lot of uproar. Now that several more seasons have passed, I've decided to update the list. I probably put too much emphasis on the eye test in my last one, and now place more importance on consistency and performance in the postseason. So enjoy the video right after this. This video is brought to you by DraftKings. The big game is finally here. Some people go to big game parties for the chili, others go for chips and dip. Only those in the know are there for the real action. Action that can only be found on DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm teaming up with DraftKings to give all new customers a winning offer. All new customers have to do is sign up for DraftKings using my promo code BARRY, bet at least $5 on the big game, and you'll instantly receive an additional $200 in bonus bets. Yup, that's right. New customers bet just $5 on the big game, and you'll instantly get $200 in bonus bets deposited in your account. Wondering what you could use $200 in bonus bets on? Try out same game parlays, where you can combine multiple bets from one game, like which team will have the most passing yards and who will score the first touchdown of the night for even bigger winnings. If mobile sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still get in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code BARRY, bet $5 on the big game, and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code BARRY only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Before I get into the top 10, here are some quarterbacks who just missed the cut. No offense to O.J. Simpson. Johnny Unitas. Unitas' numbers still hold up well today. He was the first superstar quarterback in NFL history. He won 3 MVPs, 2 NFL championships, and a Super Bowl. But his playoff career is relatively disappointing. When he missed most of the season in 1968, his backup Earl Morrall won MVP and led the team to a Super Bowl appearance. 2 years later, in his only Super Bowl win, Unitas got hurt, leaving Morrall to finish the game and clinch the title. More like Johnny Wentz and Earl Foles, in my opinion. Terry Bradshaw. Contrary to popular belief, Bradshaw was not just along for the ride for all of his rings. He won league MVP in 1978, and from 1975 onward, his numbers were actually very good for his era. He was also an excellent playoff quarterback and Super Bowl quarterback. However, his first 5 seasons were absolutely horrid, and he never had to really carry a team like other quarterbacks. He was very lucky, but he was not a scrub either. Roger Staubach. Roger is a troop, so I say any criticism with the utmost respect. He easily had the best efficiency metrics of any quarterback in the 70s. He won 2 Super Bowls and started 2 others. He won a Super Bowl MVP and made 6 Pro Bowls while winning around 75% of his regular season starts. He never won MVP or got named first team All-Pro somehow. He took way too many sacks in the playoffs, and he doesn't have enough volume stats to crack the top 10 in my opinion. Also, right after he retired, his team made 3 straight NFC Championship games, so yeah. The Cowboys used to actually be worth the hype. Imagine that. FRAN Tarkenton. He was basically Marino before Marino in terms of holding all the records but never winning a ring. Amazing longevity and consistency for his era, but no dominant peak, and was really bad in the playoffs and Super Bowl. Ben Roethlisberger. The greatest woman respecter to ever play the position, and also the only NFL quarterback who was brave enough to die fighting against Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. Yeah, I bet you forgot about that, didn't you? Ben spent his entire career just below the top tier of guys in his era like Brady, Peyton, Rodgers, and Breeze. He won 2 rings and had great counting stats, but never a truly dominant season, or was really never in contention for MVP. Also worthy of mention, Dan Fouts, Warren Moon, Kurt Warner, Sonny Jurgensen, Russell Wilson, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Without further ado, let's get to the top 10. Number 10, Brett Favre. We all know Favre is a massive piece of shit, but remember, this is strictly going by his on-field career. He's in the top 10 for a reason. He had 9 30-touchdown seasons before it became commonplace, and his Iron Man streak will probably never be broken by any other quarterback or player again. He retired as the all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns, as well as interceptions and fumbles and sacks taken. For a brief moment in late January 1998, it looked like Favre could potentially become the GOAT quarterback. He had just turned 28. He already had 3 MVPs, a stellar 9-3 playoff record with stellar playoff numbers, a Super Bowl win, and he was about to start his 2nd straight Super Bowl as a heavy favorite against Denver. He played okay in the game, but couldn't come through in the 4th quarter as Green Bay lost. Including Super Bowl 32, Favre went 4-8 over his last 12 career playoff games, never making it back to another Super Bowl, never winning another MVP, and becoming more famous for throwing terrible back-breaking interceptions in the playoffs and retirement drama every offseason. Amazingly, he also never won any game in which his team trailed by more than 15 points at any time. Not once. He had a Mahomes-type first act under Mike Holmgren from 1992 to 1998, and who just so happened to be an assistant on Holmgren's staff those 7 years? Mahomes' head coach Andy Reid. Let's just hope Mahomes doesn't have a similar second act to his career that Favre had from 99 to 2010. Favre was fun to watch and had a great peak. It's just a shame how his career and life turned out. Number 9, John Elway. Elway remains the hardest quarterback for me to rank. Old heads, players, and coaches who played with and against him absolutely swear by him, but his production leaves a lot to be desired. Career passer rating under 80, he never threw for more than 27 touchdowns in any season. He threw double-digit interceptions interceptions every season while retiring third all-time in fumbles. His first 10 seasons with Dan Reeves saw him produce Kerry Collins-type numbers before he finally began putting up great numbers over his last 6 years. Still, though, he never produced best quarterback in the league numbers, and he was a bit of a mile-high merchant, having a losing career road record. When he finally did break through in years 15 and 16 to win rings, he did so largely as a game manager on the back of Terrell Davis, and he was horrific in Super Bowl losses to Washington and San Francisco. And also his first Super Bowl win versus Green Bay. So why is Elway number 9? Because he was clutch as hell in the 1986 playoffs to get Denver to the Super Bowl. He was dominant in the 1987 and 1989 conference playoffs to get Denver to 2 more Super Bowls. He made 6 AFC Championship games, 5 Super Bowls, and he also played well in his first Super Bowl loss to the Giants and was great in his final career game against Atlanta, winning Super Bowl MVP and his second ring. If he had been drafted to a more modern offense instead of the one Denver ran, his final career numbers likely would have been absolutely amazing. When you put it all together, the counting stats, the wins, the clutch moments, and the amazing highlight reel, Elway sneaks into the top 10 despite mediocre relative stats. Number 8, Drew Brees. If Brees and Elway were both coming out of college at the same time, Elway would get drafted ahead of him 100 times out of 100. But even though Brees was everything Elway was not, short, mediocre arm, not very mobile, his numbers are so much better even when accounting for era that I had no choice but to put him ahead. At a certain point, production trumps all. Brees' first 3 seasons, though, were awful. He finally broke out in 2004, then got seriously hurt in 2005, creating his path to the Saints, where he really took off under Sean Payton. He led the league in passing yards 7 times, touchdown passes 4 times, passer rating twice. He finished with over 50 game-winning drives, won a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, and yet never won an MVP and made just 1 first-team All-Pro. He was a bit of a dome merchant, and his home-road splits are a legit knock on him, but he also might be the unluckiest great quarterback maybe ever. He finished runner-up and MVP 4 times. His best seasons also coincided with other quarterbacks having either legendary seasons like 2011 Rodgers and 2018 Mahomes, or Peyton Manning leading his team to a 14-0 start in 2009. Brees also was a very good playoff quarterback when he actually got there, as he missed the dance 9 times in 19 years as a starter. His kicker choked the game away in 2004, his defense sold to the Seahawks in 2010, his 2 go-ahead touchdown passes in the 4th quarter against San Fran were wasted by his defense in 2011, then you had the Minneapolis Miracle in 2017, the blatant no defensive pass interference call in the 2018 NFC Championship game, his defense allowing Kirk Cousins a game-winning drive to start overtime in 2019, and even Jared Cook's fumble in 2020 versus Tampa, even though Brees played horrible in that game. On top of this, his defenses were consistently horrible. Number 7, Steve Young. Young's raw stats are amazing, and when adjusted for era, his efficiency makes him look like the greatest quarterback ever. His 7-year run from 1992 to 1998 was Wayne Gretzky-esque. He led the league in completion percentage 5 times, touchdown passes 4 times, yards per attempt 4 times, passer rating 5 times, and adjusted net yards per attempt 4 times, all while making 3 first-team All-Pros, 7 Pro Bowls, and winning 2 MVPs. And oh yeah, he also had one of the best Super Bowl performances ever in 1994, throwing 6 touchdowns to win Super Bowl MVP. But there are reasons why Young isn't ranked higher. He didn't become a full-time starter until he was in his 30s, and when he did become one, he took over the equivalent of a Ferrari in some loaded 49er squads. The fact that he was awful during his stint in Tampa Bay lends some, not much, but some credence to him being a product of the 49ers system. But the biggest knock against Young, besides his lack of longevity in my opinion, is that outside of 1994, when he threw a combined 9 touchdowns and no interceptions on his way to his only Super Bowl win as a starter, he simply was not that great of a postseason quarterback. For the rest of his career in the playoffs, he threw just 11 touchdowns and 13 interceptions for a 78.7 rating, a massive drop-off from the efficiency demon he was in the regular season. He won a lot of games, but you can't help but feel the 49ers would have won another ring or 2 had he been more consistent in the playoffs, especially against the Cowboys and Packers. Number 6, Dan Marino. Most of the time when Marino is brought up, it's to talk about either his 1984 season or his 0 rings. Turns out there was a lot more to his career than that. He led the league in passing yards 5 times, touchdown passes 3 times, he won an MVP, he made 3 first-team All-Pros, and 9 Pro Bowls. He also led the league in sack percentage an astounding 10 times. He retired as the all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns by a wide margin. On top of all this, Marino was an insane thrower of the ball. That dink and dunk bullshit? Yeah, that wasn't Dan's style. He was an extremely arrogant thrower and he had the arm talent to back it up, making him extremely fun to watch for an immobile pocket passer. His career is filled with jaw-dropping pinpoint throws that almost no other quarterbacks in NFL history could make, let alone even attempt. Besides the obvious 0 rings knock, which, as much as it does get overplayed, does matter, the fact that Marino's dominance and efficiency notably declined starting in 1988 remains a mystery to me. Compared to everybody else to have ever played quarterback up through 1987, Marino was like Wilt Chamberlain, producing at levels nobody had ever seen before. But whereas Wilt would eventually squeeze out a couple rings, Marino never did. After 1987, Marino remained a premier signal caller, but he was never the best quarterback in the league at any point. He floated consistently between very good and sometimes great, but never close to his early career dominance. He finished with an 8-10 playoff record, and his average average playoff loss was by 19.5 points. Some of that falls on the defense and lack of a ground game, but Marino also bears responsibility for consistently getting blown out with his slow starts offensively. The way I see it, if you are truly that guy, you will get your team to the mountaintop at least once, as every quarterback in my top 5 did. Number 5, Aaron Rodgers. Like Marino, Rodgers only made one Super Bowl appearance in his long and accomplished career. Unlike Marino, Rodgers won his only appearance, forever freeing him from the daunting no rings questions Dan had to suffer through. Like Marino, Rodgers has ridiculous arm talent and a jaw-dropping highlight reel. Unlike Marino, Rodgers was way more mobile, took way more sacks, and was also way more selective in his aggressiveness, priding himself on low interception totals. Like Marino, Rodgers' best stretch came early in his career, specifically from the 2010 playoffs through 2014. And much like how after 1987, Marino's performance dropped off surprisingly out of nowhere, Rodgers' play did the same from 2015 to 2019. Unlike Marino, Rodgers would rediscover his early career dominance, winning 2 more MVPs late in his career in 2020 and 2021. There was a time in the early 2010s where it looked like Rodgers could end his career as the GOAT, but a mix of shitty luck and bad performance and playoff losses made sure that didn't happen. I ranked Rodgers number 1 in my last video a few years back, but I placed too much emphasis on his highlight reel. It's hard to say that a guy with nearly 500 career touchdown passes, barely 100 interceptions, 4 MVPs, 10 Pro Bowls, a Super Bowl ring, and a Super Bowl MVP has been disappointing, but that's kind of what it feels like. He was never going to pass Brady in rings, but at least he had the title as most talented quarterback to fall back on. But now he doesn't even have that, as Patrick Mahomes is destroying everything in his path. In the end, Rodgers will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but how will he be remembered 20 to 25 years from now? Most likely as a hippie weirdo who should have won more rings than he did. For anybody who ever watched Rodgers at his best, doing things that didn't seem possible on a football field, making your jaw drop and reminding you why you became a sports fan in the first place, it's somewhat of a tragedy, unless you're a Bears or Cowboys fan. Number 4, Peyton Manning. Tom Brady has all the records, but on a per-throw basis, Peyton remains the best regular season quarterback ever, at least for now, as another quarterback with the initials PM is making quite a name for himself. Peyton was somewhat turnover-prone his first 5 years before going on a decade-long run that remains jaw-dropping. In a 10-season span from 2003 to 2013, he missed all of 2011, Peyton made 10 Pro Bowls, 7 first-team All-Pros, and won 5 MVPs. And oh yeah, he also won 78% of his games. He broke the single-season touchdown record in 2004, saw it broken by Brady, and then re-broke it again in 2013 on a bum neck on a different team. He had a stretch from 2004 to 2009 where he went 71-11 in 82 games he started and finished. He was simply an unstoppable machine in the regular season, but his bugaboo will always be the playoffs. He did win 2 rings and a Super Bowl MVP, but he was extremely underwhelming in 2006 outside of the second half of the AFC Championship game and got dragged to a title by the legendary Broncos defense in 2015. He made the playoffs 15 different times and never had one dominant title run, which is inconceivable. He almost did it in 2003, having 2 godly playoff games before running into the Patriots and throwing 4 interceptions in the AFC Championship game. The closest he ever came to doing it was in 2009 until Tracy Porter happened in the 4th quarter of Super Bowl 44. He almost did it in 2013, leading Denver to Super Bowl 48 just to get blown out 43-8. This is to say nothing of all the disappointing one-and-dones he suffered. Was it all his fault? Of course not. Mike Vanderjagt says hello from 2000 and 2005 with his missed field goals. His defense that allowed Billy Volek to lead a go-ahead touchdown drive in the 4th quarter in 2007 says hello. His special teams and defense that blew a lead to the Jets in the last minute in 2010 says hello. And Raheem Moore sends a special hello from 2012. But the thing is, in 13 career playoff losses, Peyton's offense simply weren't good enough. They averaged just 14.2 points per game, and in his 9 one-and-done playoff losses, he averaged just 15.8 points per game. That unstoppable machine we saw at quarterback in the regular season just didn't show up in the playoffs nearly as much as he should have, and for that, he will have to settle for being just the 4th best quarterback ever. What a scrub. Number 3, Patrick Mahomes. Is it too early to put Mahomes this high? At first glance, it probably feels that way, but what he has accomplished in just 5 years as a starter is so mind-blowing, I have no doubt by the time his career is done, he will be top 3. So I'm not going to bother waiting. I was asked in a previous video which quarterback I think has the fewest flaws ever, and Mahomes was my answer. He has elite arm talent, he can excel throwing from both in and out of the pocket, he has the ability to scramble when needed, and he also avoids sacks at a historically great rate. The game is so easy for him he gets bored, which can lead to him forcing some throws that result in interceptions. He's already a 5-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, 2-time MVP, a Super Bowl champ, and Super Bowl MVP. And as I record this on the Friday night before Super Bowl, he's 1 game away from potentially becoming a 2-time Super Bowl champ and 2-time Super Bowl MVP at just age 27. He's already one of the best playoff quarterbacks ever, and his individual efficiency metrics are the best all-time for both the regular and postseason. If he retired today at just 27, he would walk into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. Now consider that he plays in an era where quarterbacks are playing into their 40s. By the time he's done, done, he will have absolutely destroyed the record books. The only thing determining whether or not he'll finish his career as the GOAT in most people's minds is if he can win enough rings to make the convo with Brady interesting. If my Eagles can't win it every year, then I hope Mahomes does. Number 2, Joe Montana. Yes, Joe Montana benefited from the West Coast offense being ahead of its time. He benefited from having great defenses. He benefited from no salary cap. He benefited from having Bill Walsh and Jerry Rice. But here's the thing. He also played against some of the most physical defenses in history, aka the Bears and the Giants. His opponents also didn't have a salary cap. He had 2 second-team All-Pro nods, 2 rings, and 2 Super Bowl MVPs before Jerry Rice was drafted. He had his best season ever in 1989 without Bill Walsh. He wasn't a physical freak, but he was way more mobile than people think because he was a goofy-looking white guy. His arm strength was merely okay, not great, but good enough. He had beautiful footwork in the pocket and was excellent at going through reads. He led the league in completion percentage 5 times, touchdown passes twice, passer rating twice, made 8 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros, and won 2 MVP. He's one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks ever, but what really made Montana the GOAT for many people until recently was his postseason dominance. Montana won 4 Super Bowls and 3 Super Bowl MVPs, and in the one Super Bowl where he didn't win MVP, he threw for 357 yards with a game-tying and game-winning touchdown in the 4th quarter. He is, without question, the best Super Bowl quarterback ever on a per-throw basis. 11 touchdowns to no interceptions with an unbelievable 127.8 passer rating. His 1989 postseason is statistically the greatest postseason any quarterback has ever had. Outside of a weird, fluky 0-3 stretch from 85 to 87, Montana went 16-4 in his other 20 playoff games, throwing for 45 touchdowns and 17 interceptions with an incredible 101.7 rating in a much tougher era for quarterbacks. He made 7 conference championship games, and if not for some terrible calls late in the 83 championship game versus Washington and a Roger Craig fumble late in the 90 AFC championship game versus the Giants, he might have led the Niners to 6 Super Bowl appearances in a 10-season span instead of 4. Once San Francisco discarded him, he went to Kansas City and took them within 1 game of the Super Bowl in 1993, showing that he wasn't just a product of San Fran's system. His playoff numbers are still excellent even by today's standards. He wasn't super durable, but he had the fewest holes in his resume of any legendary quarterback, and there was no quarterback in NFL history who terrified opponents more in the clutch than Montana. That is, until the guy at number 1 came along. Number 1, Tom Brady. In my last edition, I left Brady off entirely. I knew that it was blasphemous, but for as much as I hate this weirdo and his fans, I can't deny what he accomplished. There isn't any facet that Brady doesn't cover when going through the GOAT checklist. He had the longevity, he had the consistency, he had the dominant peak years, he had unmatched success in the playoffs and Super Bowl, success that will most likely never be repeated. Some quarterbacks have the titles, but not the individual success, like Troy Aikman and Terry Bradshaw. Some quarterbacks have the individual success, but not enough titles, like, I don't know, Dan Marino, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning. What made Montana the GOAT for so long was that he had the most titles and the individual greatness. Well, Brady also has both while completely dwarfing Montana's numbers and wins. While Montana leaving San Francisco and making a conference championship game with another team is amazing, Brady left New England for Tampa and won a Super Bowl, one-upping his childhood idol once again. It's true, Brady benefited from playing in a way more quarterback-friendly era than Montana, and he was insanely fucking boring to watch. He was like a supercomputer playing quarterback. There really wasn't much flash, just ruthless execution and checkdowns. He was consistently blessed with great scoring defenses and was also unfathomably lucky so many times at big moments, like the Tuck rule, the Butler interception, D4 lining up off sides, Marlon McCree fumble, the Falcons choking, etc. I could go on. And he very easily could have finished his career with just 2 or 3 rings if a few plays went differently. But then again, he might have 10 or 12 rings if Archie Manning never had sex a couple times. There are also the cheating scandals and how he won so many playoff games with extremely mediocre numbers, the fact that he played in terrible divisions for virtually his entire career, giving him the fast lane to high seeds and first-round buys. But even as I say all of this, what puts Brady at number 1 for me, and something I denied for so long until finally it became too much to ignore, is that the guy was just inevitable. When he had to come through late in close games for his team, he did so more frequently than any other quarterback ever, which is a big reason why he has 14 playoff game-winning drives and no other quarterback ever has more than 6. It never mattered how awful he was for 3 quarters, you always knew he would meet the moment in the 4th quarter to get his team across the finish line to win and make you angry. Montana had this quality as well, but Brady has done it so many more times than Montana did. If I needed one game to win to save my life, I would want Brady at quarterback. 7 rings, 10 Super Bowl appearances, 14 conference championship game appearances, 15 Pro Bowls, 3 MVPs, and 5 Super Bowl MVPs in 21 years as a starting quarterback, all while being the most clutch quarterback of all time, unfortunately makes Brady the GOAT. As much as I hate to admit it, Brady got the job done more than any other quarterback ever. And as long as they're keeping score, isn't that what matters most? Now excuse me while I go throw up.